Welcome to the program today. Mondo Gonzalez here with a prophecy update, and I've been looking forward to this discussion with Doug Woodward for a while because many people have written in and asked us about what is going on over at CERN, and Doug has written a lot about this, and so we're going to pick his brain today. And so welcome, Doug.
Hey, Mondo, thank you so much. It's always great to be with you, and you always give me the hard subjects. That's what I think.
You know, this is, and we want to apologize up front because some of this is, I love astronomy, as people know, but some of this can get kind of technical. We're going to try to avoid some of that. We're not going to get into the quantum mechanics necessarily and some of that stuff, except in general. But, I always like, for people that maybe we're getting new visitors and we're getting new viewers all the time. Who is Doug Woodward? What have you done? Where can people find out more about what you're doing?
Really briefly, I've been writing books really for about the last 11, 12 years, and I've written 20 books, participated in a couple others, and so I have a website, faith-happens.com. You guys certainly have sold a lot of my books. We've done a few DVDs. There's a DVD related to the subject today we're going to talk about that I think Tyler keeps creating more copies of it because it's really going well. So it's a fascinating subject, CERN, and so it's one that I dealt with a friend, Anthony Patch, who is superb in physics and far superior to me in his knowledge of physics. But I'm sort of the writer. I kind of provide the general explanations of things and hopefully make it accessible to people.
So we have, what you've done is, because I've been looking at them and reading them, is talk about the book and the DVD for a minute, just so that in case people are interested.
Okay, we wrote the book back in 2016, Revising Reality, forward by Stan Deyo, who did an amazing forward. The co-writers were Josh Peck, Gonzalo Shimura, Anthony Patch, and myself. Then I served as editor for the entire book. So I did a lot of the writing and underwriting, you might say, of the book. Then we did, not long afterwards, Anthony and I did a DVD, and we had Lynn Liaz sort of serve as host. She's been involved and has had a show or shows on the internet for a long time, and so she sort of participated in that. And that was just tremendously successful. So we continue to sell that because, the information there, it still has a long shelf life. Mhm. Okay. Well, CERN, technically, although it's a synonym for LHC, it really stands for the name of the organization that hosts this. And if I did a literal, it's a French acronym, so the literal French is Council European Research Nuclear, right? Or basically the European Organization for Nuclear Research is really what it boils down to. So that's CERN. Now, LHC, Large Hadron Collider. Hadron, really, I'll just mention a little bit about physics. You got your protons, your electrons, and your neutrons. Well, so if you kind of take out the electrons, you're really talking about protons and neutrons that form the nucleus of an atom. And really, hadrons are those combinations. A little bit more to that than that, but that's basically, keeping it simple, that's what that's about. So the Hadron Collider, it's a 27-kilometer, about 16-mile ring that runs under the border of Geneva. Well, it's outside of Geneva, under the border of Switzerland and France. And this circle provides an opportunity to send streams at each other, very tiny streams that are traveling at 99% the speed of light. And these hadrons are colliding into each other, and they create massive collisions and enormous, well, all kinds of things that they create, which we'll talk about. But the LHC really refers to this collider. It's the largest machine that mankind has ever built. It is one of the most expensive as well. We can talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the things that you see is they are, talk a little bit about the power requirements that they've been attempting. They've been setting records now.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that.
Well, it's a little bit confusing in terms of the way that they provide the information about power and so forth. And I've had to kind of go back and even brush up on some of my core electronics to remember about circuits and resistors and capacitors and all these kinds of things, because it's a little tricky. But essentially, it's voltage, and it has to do with the potential power of these various particles or the collisions. And so the collisions to date have generated energies of about 16 TeV, which is trillion volts. But what has delayed or caused CERN to go offline for this past several years is to increase its performance, to increase its power, such that it now can go up to, it's about 1.5 petavolts, which is quadrillion. So it's up another, I guess that's 10,000 times over a trillion, if I'm not mistaken. So so it's 15 zeros. So it's extremely powerful. Now these little, when these guys collide, the hadrons collide, they decay virtually instantly. How fast? 10 to the negative 22nd power. So it's such a picosecond that it would hardly goes unnoticed. Except they got all these machines that are like cameras that take pictures of these things and create gobs of data, and that's what scientists study.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating because you think in terms of oftentimes we think, well, how are we going to examine some of these quantum level stuff of this is the nature of reality, and microscopes and other things can only go so far. So they bring these things and they pound them together, because what happens when you pound things together? Things break off, and so by doing that at this almost to the speed of light as far as they can, they're trying to see what is the result of this collision and what are the remnants, and then they're able to use their stuff to measure it and detect it, which to me, they're finding so many, you talk about the God particle and the Higgs boson and all these other things, and you're like, these are some of the, I would say, humbling aspects that, as smart as humanity thinks they are, they still haven't figured it all out, right?
Well, that's true. You get into the crazy language of particle physics, and you're dealing with quarks and gluons and leptons and mesons and all these different types of particles. Now, there's really kind of a political thing about all of this too, which is that there are many scientists that believe that what the guys at CERN are doing is simply ridiculous. That in their science, they're approaching this from a science standpoint, and they're saying you guys are just trying to fragment these little tiny microscopic particles, and you're trying to fragment it and create some instances in which you can try to say, well, this means this and that means that. And even the Higgs boson, which is called the God particle, which really isn't something that the scientists called it. It was what a journalist called it,
right.
And it made a good headline, right? So the Higgs field and the Higgs boson is their attempt to explain why anything in the universe has mass. Now, we can think in terms of, well, weight and mass are the same thing. They're actually not. Mass is more of a density measure. A lot of mass has a lot of weight, but they're kind of different. It's like some people weigh 200 pounds, and then some people weigh 160, and the people that are 160 are more dense than the people that are 200. So mass and weight are not necessarily exactly the same thing. So anyway, so they're trying to understand what are the most very fundamental particles of the universe. And there's a book which I've been reading called The Higgs Fake, and it's by a particle physicist that is pointing out all these flaws in the scientific methodology of what they're doing. And he basically says, they keep saying that if they keep breaking things up into smaller and smaller particles, they're going to sort of come up to some, incredible discovery about what is the most fundamental aspect of the universe. Well, it really is deteriorating. And a lot of the scientists are saying, you guys have gone way too far. And this stuff it's so tied in with speculation that it may not make any sense to keep doing this. And yet they keep coming up with a new rationale for how they can attract billions of dollars to continue to support the operation and the 2,600 people they have that work there. So there's a lot of politics involved in this too.
Yeah, it's so true. I've been looking at some of the stuff that they're doing. They're trying to raise money right now for a new expansion, in 2027. So, here we kind of talked about the science, and now, some people might be glazing over in their mind, but
it goes a lot deeper.
There's also been, let's kind of get into some of the, I would say that the speculative or the fun topics. Some of it is not speculation. So some of the things, let's talk about what's not speculation, and that is anybody can go online, they can go to YouTube. I'm just gonna throw out a few titles if they want to look at this. You guys talk in the book anyway about the dance of symmetry. There's these religious occult ceremony rituals. Here's one title that people want to look up. It's still available. The title is 2017 CERN opening ritual ceremony deleted scenes. Now, you watch this. It's about 30 minutes long. It's right there on location. Talk a little bit about what in the world, if you watch this, you would shake your head going, why is this somewhat pagan ceremony, completely pagan, connected with CERN? What in the world?
Well, it certainly is. That itself, I could probably talk for 30 minutes about without taking a breath. But certainly there is an underlying occultism to what's going on. And we have to remember that, if you look at this from a philosophical standpoint, Europe is about 100 years, you could say ahead of us, but I'd say 100 years more devolved than we are in terms of belief systems. And so Europe has returned, especially their leadership, has returned increasingly to pagan topics. And there is a very strong pagan undercurrent at CERN. There's some of the things that are little documents and things they have on display in the lobby at CERN, I'm told. Haven't seen them. There's the statue of Shiva outside, which we'll talk about. So there's these aspects to it that there's an occult basis for a lot of what's going on. And you got to keep in mind that the leaders are going to be almost all atheists, but yet they're still trying to find some cosmic meaning to the universe, to the cosmos. And so they assume that if they go to the very, very tiny, these super micro particles all the way down to strings, if strings exist, which is another debate, that they can somehow discover the nature of the cosmos. And of course, that's just a farce. But you will find so many different occult topics linked to CERN, directly and indirectly. And of course, we talk about that in detail, not just in the book, but especially in the DVD, where we talk about Saturn, the black cube, the religion of the black cube, why Saturn's associated with the black cube. We get into 2001, A Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick's film, the whole meaning of the black monolith. I mean, all this stuff just goes on and on and on. And CERN itself, there was a god named Cernunnos, which was a god of nature. Shiva, god of destruction, and god or goddess of destruction. And then you get into the whole issue of Apollo. And this one is a real head scratcher, is they built CERN on top of or in the area of a temple to Apollo. Well, now, why is that significant? Well, Apollo was many different things, but one of the things that Apollo was was a God of destruction. We actually read about that in Revelation 9:11, if memory serves, about the God of the bottomless pit is Abaddon or Apollyon. Apollyon being, I won't say a participle, but another related to the word Apollo or the name Apollo. And in Hebrew, it says in Hebrew, the name is Abaddon, and in Greek, it is Apollyon, and it means destruction. All right, so what do they mean by destruction? What they're sort of trying to do, there's this other macro program that the leadership of the world has, which is to basically destroy about 7 billion people because they believe the world is overpopulated and that we're using up all the resources and the green climate thing and all that. That's all part of this. But it's very likely that CERN, in the mind of some of these leaders, relates to the possibility of damaging the world and destroying a lot of humanity. And so you have Shiva, you have Apollo, you have Set, which is the Egyptian god of destruction and death. You have the Saturn death cult. You have various brotherhoods, the Brotherhood of Saturn, which is a German super secret occult brotherhood. Oh man, this stuff just goes on and on and on. And so you will be absolutely stunned if you watch the DVD and you see all of the connections. It leaves you going, or leaving it sort of saying, there's a lot of speculation here, but boy, there's so much smoke. There's got to be a really big fire under here somewhere.
But that's a good way to say it because, we don't have, this is why we call it speculation. We don't have 100% certainty on a lot of these things, but the idea of there being smoke, where's that coming from? Because again, if anybody, I don't, recommend people watching that ceremony, but I spent the time to go through it, and I was like, I was blown away that, who organized this? Here it is in front of all these relative dignitaries of such a very sophisticated scientific endeavor that, again, as we say, most of these scientists, let's be careful. Most of the scientists that are there participating in this research, they're probably very secular, very atheistic in their viewpoints. They're not necessarily endorsing this ceremony, but somebody behind the scene above them is not only endorsing it, but promoting it and encouraging it and organizing it, right?
It's kind of like the analogy of Masonry and Freemasonry, that the Masons that are up to the 32nd degree, they don't really knows what goes on when it gets to the 33rd degree and beyond. And so you've kind of got that same lack of knowledge at a certain level. The whole concept, though, one of the points I would really stress is that everything is presented as if it's scientific fact, as if it's academically accepted. And to a great extent, it is academically accepted. But like any type of knowledge, you get an establishment, and the establishment begins to defend that knowledge base, and they teach it to the people that are up and coming. And pretty soon, if you challenge that knowledge base, you get thrown out. You can't have a career. And so the standard model, as it's called, which is the way that the atom is subdivided into quarks and leptons and all this other stuff, the standard model is actually in crisis because there are so many data points now that say that what they've developed just doesn't work. And in part, this gets into, I'll jump over now and talk about, well, what's the point of this sort of rekindling or re-energizing CERN, and what are they trying to do next? They're trying to find dark matter. Well, if you don't know what dark matter is, that's probably okay. But supposedly dark matter is roughly 25% of all, 75% of all matter and 25% of everything in the universe. And then another 70% is considered dark energy, and only 5% is the universe that we can detect, that we see, we can measure, and so forth. And so supposedly CERN is going to discover these particles that they have mass, but they cannot connect with any type of the normal forces that connect all of the rest of reality. And so there's this theory that they've had for some time, and it gets into the way that we see galaxies move in the universe that causes them to say that there must be dark matter. And yet there is, it's very unlikely that there really is dark matter. The alternative point of view, which I'll be writing, we talk about revising reality. I'm working on revising reality too right now.
Oh, good, good.
And I'm getting into some of the science of this stuff and talking about why it's actually a lot of hogwash. And there's a lot of scientists that it's not that I'm a scientist. I'm just pulling together, compiling, assimilating the information I'm getting from many other scientists that disagree with the standard model and the way that we think of the universe today. The alternative approach is called the electric universe or the plasma-based universe, and it has just radically different ideas, and yet they can test everything in the laboratory with it, and it seems to work and it scales. So what happens in the laboratory can be seen in the galaxies, and vice versa. So anyway, there's again the main point. You can't necessarily take everything like symmetry. Supposedly there's the symmetry and supersymmetry. A lot of this has to do with balancing mathematic equations, and to a large extent, cosmology today is just mathematics. It has very little to do with actual observation, has almost nothing to do with prediction. And so any good cosmology ought to be able to predict what's going to happen. Unfortunately, the standard model and the scientists, which is most of academic, that support it, they really can't predict. They predict things wrong all the time. And it's because they actually don't understand the fundamentals of the universe. So Revising Reality 2 is going to get into that and explain why Einstein had it wrong, why there's just so many different things that we take for granted today that we've been taught that's just not true. And so, again, revising reality, that's kind of what it's kind of the overarching idea of what the book and the DVD, maybe a future DVD, will be about as well.
No, that to me, that would be something that would be fascinating to cover. And have you talked at all with Lee Brainerd? He's been doing a lot of research in the electric universe stuff.
The name's familiar, but no, I have not talked with him. I have watched, I don't know, 150 videos of the electric universe people. And I think he's probably one of those guys that's on some of those videos, but I can't remember. Yeah.
Just throwing his name out there. He does a lot of things. He's been doing some stuff with, apostasia and the early church fathers and some other things. So that's where he comes up. But anyways,
that's kind of my wheelhouse normally. But I've developed an interest in this because I'm sort of an apologist, and I believe that we have to knock down these untruths that deceive people. And a lot of the deception today is physics. It's astrophysics. It's the way that supposedly the universe is governed predominantly by gravity. It's not. Electromagnetism is 10 to the 39th power more powerful than gravity. And yet physics is saying that gravity is the core force that causes stars to be formed, galaxies to be formed, etc. And it's not.
I was just reading an article just today on some of the new pictures that are coming out from the James Webb scope, and really already it's only been active for 6 months at the most, but even less. But the ways in which, as they're looking back, it's challenging the standard model, because according to the standard theory, the farther you go back, the more disorganized matter was, but yet they're going back and they're seeing fully formed galaxies, and they're like, wow, that shouldn't be like that. And so it's interesting how the technology, as the technology continues to increase, that it's providing results that hopefully, that the nature of science is to have an hypothesis and to test it. You would hope that there'd be humility there, but not always the case.
Well, the thing that I've discovered as I've done all this reading is that, that we're taught the Big Bang. The Big Bang was disproved 30 years ago. We're taught that the universe is expanding. The universe is not expanding. A guy named Halfan Arp is the guy that's sort of the modern day Galileo of astronomy. And there's this whole concept of redshift and the Doppler effect and blah, blah, blah. All this stuff is accumulated, and essentially, whether it's dark matter, the force of gravity, the expanding universe, the Big Bang Theory, all these things are sort of the standard tenets of astronomy that we kind of pick up, because you have these popularizers like Brian Cox or Brian Greene, Elisa Randall, these people that come on TV shows, Neil deGrasse Tyson, and they talk about all these things as if they're accepted fact. Well, amongst them, they are the accepted facts. But the minority opinion, though, is and there's hundreds of people that are into the minority opinion. They challenge all these things, but their voices cannot be heard.
Yeah.
Once again, because of the media. Because of, if you got an issue to talk about, you better talk to Brian Cox. He's the man. Well, that's kind of the challenge that you're facing. So a lot of this stuff has been disproven for decades, and yet it persists. And so that's one of the things that I'll try to really point out in the new book is no, these things are not true. They've been disproven, and yet they persist. And unfortunately, the untruths are things that substantiate the atheistic position of cosmology, which is a tragedy.
Yeah. Talk about, let's go back to the religious or the occultic or really the speculative in the sense that you have people making claims that one of the agendas of these occultic people at the top is to try to somehow use physics to open up a portal into another dimension. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. Well, there's a lot of confusion about that. And we certainly talk about that in the book, and we talk about that in the DVD, and that, even I think his name is Bartolucci, who's one of the maybe the whole leader of the whole thing, talks about, well, we may open up another dimension, and something might come through, or we might put something through that dimension. I honestly don't know if he believes that or if he's just using that to create interest. Like it's a publicity stunt, kind of like Paul McCartney. We buried Paul. So I don't know if it's really real or not, because if you think about it, portals, the supernatural, it comes into play. It manifests itself in all kinds of ways every day in the world. And if you've had any experiences, and you may or may not have had any experiences, I don't know. I've had it only sort of partially with demonic entities or manifestations of demons or whatever. We don't have to have a portal to bring these things through. They come through basically on the belief systems of individuals. And so it's kind of like Jack Parsons, the JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Jack Parsons and this other guy did this, this ritual called Babylon Working out of the Mojave Desert. And things changed. This was done like in about 1944, 45, 46, but it's not too long afterwards that the Roswell thing happens, and sort of the modern UFO focus has come to pass. And there's a lot of people that say that ritual that they performed, it had a significant impact upon opening up portals, and the demonic powers poured through those. So, I think there's a possibility. I think that, the things that we do know about CERN, the possible destruction that it can do, we haven't even talked about that. There's all kinds of things about the way it could really harm the Earth.
Well, that was going to be my question. Maybe on that is CERN dangerous? As a human being, is this something I should be concerned about? I'm not saying fearful, but is CERN dangerous? Talk about that.
As far as the concern, since we believe in eschatology, we know how the world comes to an end. And it comes to an end by a new beginning, and that's, of course, Jesus when he comes. So I don't sit around worrying at night that CERN's going to blow up the world or something like that. However, there are certainly things that are going on. CERN has, when it is running its engines and doing collisions and so forth at its top, sort of at the top speed, creates a magnetic field above the area that is 15,000 times more powerful than the Earth's magnetic field, just proportionally in that area. There are earthquakes that happen sort of in a dipolar area. In other words, if you draw a line from CERN to the center of the Earth to the other side of the globe, you find yourself in New Zealand. And there have been earthquakes that seem to coincide with when CERN turns on its lights, you might say. So yeah, there's that. There's the magnetic thing. Then there's this thing called strangelets. Strangelets are quarks that are attached to gluons, which gluons sort of are the things that attach to all quarks to sort of give them substance, we could say, if all that is true. And but anyway, the strangelet is what's known as a gluon quark condensate, and these particles are basically incapable of being disposed of. And once they're created, they sink to the center of the Earth, where basically they get trapped because of the gravitational pull. The gravity is important if you have a massive object like the Earth. The gravity then becomes very important, as we learn every day. So these strangelets sit there, and strangelets have what's considered a stable characterization, and they attract the unstable thing, the unstable rest of of particles and so forth. So there's this worry that strangelets will continue to sort of suck together the core of the Earth, and like the Earth sort of implode upon itself. So there's that fear. I think that fear is, of course, unfounded, because I don't believe that's the way that the Bible predicts that things are going to occur. But nevertheless, that's one that's brought up. The earthquakes, there's the idea of creating a black hole, a mini black hole. A lot of debate about that. There were scientists years ago that actually sued CERN because they were fearful that what CERN was going to do was create a black hole.
Well, Stephen Hawking, didn't he mention that? Dr. Stephen Hawking, he mentioned that was a concern of his?
Yeah, the supposedly a vacuum bubble, and I don't know what it is, by the way, a vacuum bubble that could come along and basically consume the Earth and consume the whole cosmos. And so, so there's a lot of these theories, and of course there are a lot of speculation, but what's difficult for us is that they're the smartest guys in the world, supposedly, that are espousing these things, and so we're kind of all dumbfounded. We go, well, how do we react to that?
Yeah, exactly.
Me with my Bible, how do I react to that? So anyway, eschatology, that's the way.
Well, we have that supreme confidence, which is great. Well, let's kind of wrap it up in the sense of final thoughts or words on CERN. I know they're continuing in their progress. They're starting a new session, or they have started it. Any final thoughts for the viewers?
Well, again, their main focus is to find dark matter. And dark matter basically doesn't exist. Now, black holes, that's another thing. Recently, we saw some pictures of, we finally seen a black hole. The black hole at the center of the Milky Way. There are other explanations for it. And black holes likely do not exist because the force of gravity itself would repel mass. Gravity doesn't just pull together, it can repel as well. And so there's good scientific arguments for why a black hole could not exist. And so, again, you're going to hear things. You got to take everything with a grain of salt that you hear, because you've got the political reasons. They're trying to justify their budget. You've got 2,600 mouths to feed. You got to keep the institution going. The way they think that they can prove new things is by upping the energy and breaking up, these particles into greater and greater, sort of little bitty tiny particles. And at the end of the day, like this guy says, the Higgs fake is that all they're doing is confusing. They're confusing themselves, confusing everybody else. And good science and good physics will explain things. It will not continue to make things more and more and more complex. And so, there's simpler explanations, and hopefully with the Lord's leading, I'll be able to publish a book before too awfully long. I've already done about 100 pages of it.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
It's coming. We promised it 5 years ago, but all kinds of things happened that caused us not to go down that path yet. So anyway, we're ready now.
Yeah, awesome. Doug, appreciate your time, and those watching. Here we are. I think one of the things that intrigues me the most, and we'll keep an eye on it, is it's just some of the occultic and the pagan ritual nature that's connected to what they're doing. And again, as Doug mentioned, these are things where there's smoke, there's fire, and we just want to keep our eyes on it, and again, to pray against it for sure, some of that stuff. But if those of you watching today, we're going to continue to try to keep up to date on some of these trends. And thank you for watching today, this prophecy update. Appreciate your prayers as always. Lots going on here, exciting things, and we can't do it without God for sure. And we want to keep Him at the center. So appreciate you watching today, and we'll see you next time.
Have you ever wanted to explore the Bible and the mysteries of the universe at a deeper level, but didn't know where to start or who to trust? Have you ever wondered about some of the Bible's most controversial subjects? The giants of Genesis 6, the divine counsel of Psalm 82, cosmic heavenly wars in the ancient past, the secrets of NASA and our space programs, shapeshifters, CERN, the Book of Enoch, Nikola Tesla, Albert Einstein, and so much more. We often refer to some of the fringe subjects we explore here at Prophecy Watchers as things you'll probably never hear about in church. And Doug Woodward's new book, Revising Reality, a biblical look into the cosmos, is a testament to that statement. Doug is a deep thinker and a full-time author and researcher who has dedicated his life to studying the deeper concepts of Scripture. Along with 3 close friends, Josh Peck, Anthony Patch, and Gans Shimura, they've written a book that will challenge you to take your understanding of God's creation to a whole new level. You are about to enter the world of the supernatural and discover a world you didn't even know existed. Doug's book is available from our ministry for your gift of $25 or more, with shipping included anywhere in the USA. Just call the toll-free number on your screen 24/7, or if you prefer, visit our bookstore online at prophecywatchers.tv. We've also put together a special package of resources that will help you understand the complexity and beauty of God's creation. We're calling it the Secrets of the Universe package. It includes Doug's book, Revising Reality, his stunning DVD, CERN Decoded, the story of the mysterious Hadron Collider in Geneva, Switzerland, and Josh Peck's book, Unraveling the Multiverse, the Christian's Guide to Entities from Higher Realities, Strange Technologies, and Ancient Prophecies Being Fulfilled Today. The Secrets of the Universe package is available for your gift of $75 or more, and as always, shipping is included anywhere in the USA. It also comes with a free bonus, a copy of Doug's amazing book on the mysterious planet Mars, Lying Wonders of the Red Planet. Was Mars once home to an ancient angelic civilization? You're going to want to get this free bonus book and find out what Doug has discovered. Thanks for tuning in to Prophecy Watchers. Bible prophecy is coming to pass in these end times like never before, and everything we're doing here is designed to show people that Jesus is the only answer for these troubled times. That's why we're here, and that's why we invite incredible Bible teachers like Doug Woodward to be on our program. Your faithful support of our ministry is helping us take God's Word to the 4 corners of the world like never before. So keep your eyes on the skies because Jesus is coming soon.